Hello again, everybody. Lance Smith here, and welcome to episode 245 of the Bible Difficulties and Answers podcast. Let me open with this. If the Bible ever did contradict itself, it wouldn't be in some obscure corner nobody reads. It would show up in the details, the kind of details we're looking at today. Because here's the issue. In Leviticus 4, when the whole community sins unintentionally, the instruction is simple. Bring a young bull as a sin offering. But in Numbers 15, for what looks like the same situation, now you've got a bull, a goat, a grain offering, and a drink offering. So which is it? One offering, multiple offerings? Or is this one of those places skeptics point to and say, see, it doesn't line up? That's what we're going to answer today. And by the end of this episode, not only will this make sense, you're going to see why it actually fits together better than you probably expected. Let's start with how this is framed in the Big Book of Bible Difficulties by Norman Geisler and Thomas Howe. They point out the tension clearly. Leviticus describes a bull as a sin offering. Numbers describes a bull as a burnt offering and a goat as a sin offering. And their conclusion is simple. One passage supplements the other. They're right, but let's walk through why. Let's look at Numbers 15:24, our focus verse today. And from the New Living Translation, it says this: If the mistake was made unintentionally, the whole community must present a young bull for a burnt offering, along with its prescribed grain offering and liquid offering, with one male goat for a sin offering. Leviticus 4:13-14 says this: If the entire Israelite community sins, they must present a young bull for a sin offering. So, yes, on the surface, there is a difference. But if you read that quickly, it can feel like a contradiction. But here's the key. There is only one kind of sin offering. One. The Hebrew term is kata'oth. That never changes. What changes is the level of detail. Leviticus 4 zooms in tight. It focuses specifically on the sin offering itself, that part that deals directly with guilt and purification. Numbers 15 zooms out. Now you're seeing the full response of the community, not just dealing with sin, but restoring their relationship with God. Let me put that in plain terms. Leviticus is showing you how the problem gets fixed. Numbers is showing you what the full restoration looks like. Or if you want it even simpler, Leviticus answers, how is the sin handled? Numbers answers, what does the community do once it's recognized? And those aren't competing questions, they're connected. Now, let's slow this down just a bit, because this is where people either get it or they don't. In Numbers 15, the bull is a burnt offering, total surrender, completely consumed. The goat is the sin offering, the kata'oth, dealing with guilt. The grain and drink offerings accompany the burnt offering. So you don't have two sin offerings, you have one sin offering surrounded by the rest of the worship response. And interestingly, Rashi, the medieval Jewish commentator, noticed something here. Normally, the sin offering comes first in the ritual order, but in Numbers 15, the burnt offering is mentioned first. That's not random. It highlights that this passage isn't just repeating Leviticus, it's presenting a broader, slightly different angle on the situation. Now, let's bring in some deeper scholarship. There's an excellent article by Vincenz Heereman titled Sacrificial Atonement in Numbers 15, 22-31, the Theological Implications of an Unforgivable Sin. He builds on an earlier work by Israeli scholar Ari Tog, and together their insight is really helpful here. They argue that Numbers 15 is essentially expanding on Leviticus 4. It's a kind of interpretive clarification. In other words, it's not changing the law, it's explaining it so it can't be misunderstood. And one of the biggest clues is how often the text repeats the idea of unintentional sin. It shows up again and again. That repetition is doing something important. It's narrowing the focus. Because right after that, right after laying out what happens when sin is unintentional, the passage turns sharply, and it introduces something else entirely, the high-handed sin. Deliberate, defiant, done with full awareness. And the text says, there is no sacrifice for that. Now, let's stop there, because this is where the passage really hits. This is where it stops being technical and starts being personal. Because what God is saying here is this. This system is not a loophole. It is not a religious reset button. It's not do whatever you want and this just go ahead and bring the right animal and we'll call it even. That's not what this is. Let me put it as plainly as I can. If you sin in weakness, there is a provision. If you sin in ignorance, there is a provision. If you sin and then realize it and turn back, there is a provision. But if you knowingly, deliberately, defiantly say, I know what God said and I don't care, that's a different category. And no ritual fixes that. No outward act covers that. That requires something deeper. That requires repentance. Let me give you a real-world picture. If you accidentally damage something, you make it right. But if you look someone in the eye, break it on purpose, and then say, I'll deal with it later, you're not dealing with a mistake anymore. You're dealing with defiance. That's the line Numbers 15 draws. And it's a line we don't get to ignore just because we're on this side of the cross. Now, when you look across the commentaries, they all land in the same place. Matthew Henry and John Gill both treat these passages as complementary. Resources like Bible Hub, Study Light, Precept Austin, and Enduring Word all walk through the details and show the same pattern. Leviticus gives the core instruction. Numbers expands the full response. Even more technical work, like the study from Detroit Baptist Theological Seminary on the sin and guilt offerings, reinforces that while procedures can vary, the category of the sin offering remains consistent. So when you step back and look at it all together, the tension disappears. And here's where it all comes together. Every one of these offerings, bulls, goats, grain, drink, it's all pointing forward. It's pointing to something better, something final. As Christians, we believe that's fulfilled in Jesus Christ. He is the sin offering, fully dealing with guilt. He is the burnt offering, perfectly surrendered to the Father. What the system pointed to, He accomplished once for us all. But don't miss this. Numbers 15 still speaks to us because the warning is still there. Grace is real, but it's not something you play with. Forgiveness is real, but it's not something you presume on. A heart that resists God on purpose is not something you fix with outward religion. It has to be dealt with honestly. So, let's answer the question clearly. Are there two kinds of sin offerings in Numbers 15:24? No. There is one, the ketoth. What Numbers gives us is not a different category, but a fuller picture. Leviticus zooms in on atonement. Numbers zooms out to show restoration and renewed commitment. Leviticus fixes the problem. Numbers restores the relationship. And when you read them together, they fit exactly the way they're supposed to. If this episode helped you see that more clearly, and maybe kept you with me through Leviticus and Numbers without falling asleep, I'd love to hear from you. You can email me at BibleDifficultiesAndAnswers@gmail.com. Join the conversation on Facebook. And if you'd like to support the podcast, head over to buymeacoffee.com/Lance Smith. Next Friday, we're looking at Numbers 16:31. Was Korah swallowed by the earth or burned? That's going to be a good one. All episodes are archived at BibleDifficultiesAndAnswers.podbean.com. I'm Lance Smith, wishing you good health, good study, and God's richest blessings. So long, everybody.